The grand ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers, gold-framed mirrors, and the sound of laughter rising above the delicate notes of a live orchestra. Waiters in white gloves glided through the crowd, carrying trays of champagne. Tonight was not just any celebration. It was the Carter family's annual gala, a gathering of power, prestige, and polished lies. At the center of it all stood Adrian Carter, the 35-year-old CEO who had clawed his way from obscurity into the spotlight of the city's elite. Dressed in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, he looked every inch the man who had it all: wealth, power, and charm. But his charm tonight was directed not at his wife, Elena, who was 6 months pregnant and sitting quietly at the edge of the room, but at the young woman clinging to his arm. Her name was Sabrina Lee, 26, ambitious, breathtaking in a scarlet gown that shimmered under the lights. Her smile was wide, calculated, the kind of smile that disarmed men and won over women. To the untrained eye, she looked like the perfect partner. But to Elena, that smile was a blade driven straight into her heart. Elena had arrived at the gala with hope. She thought tonight would be a chance to show the family that she belonged, even though she had come from a modest background. Her late mother had taught her to be strong, to endure, and she had promised herself that no matter what, she would protect the life growing inside her. But as she watched her husband parade Sabrina in front of hundreds of guests, her hands trembled over her swollen belly. The whispers started like smoke spreading through dry wood. "Isn't that Adrian's wife over there? Then who's the woman on his arm? Look how proud he looks. My God, how humiliating." Mothers turned their heads, daughters exchanged glances, businessmen raised their brows in silent judgment. But Adrian thrived on the attention. He basked in the whispers, even smiled as though he had won some twisted prize. Then it happened. Elena, pale but resolute, gathered the courage to stand. She walked across the polished marble floor, her heels echoing louder than the orchestra. Her eyes locked on Adrian's. "Adrian," she said, her voice trembling but clear. "What is this? Why are you doing this to me, to us, to our child?" The room froze. Forks hovered in midair. Champagne glasses stopped halfway to lips. Every eye turned to the pregnant woman confronting the CEO. Adrian's jaw tightened. For a brief moment, something flickered in his eyes: annoyance, shame, perhaps even fear. But it quickly hardened into arrogance. He turned to the crowd, smirked, and then backhanded Elena across the face. The sharp sound cracked through the silence like a gunshot. Gasps erupted. Someone dropped a glass, the shatter echoing across the ballroom. Elena stumbled, her hand instinctively clutching her belly as tears welled in her eyes. She had been humiliated in the worst way possible, by the man who had once sworn to love her, in front of family, friends, and strangers alike. And the cruelest part? His mother, Margaret Carter, sitting regally at the head table, did not rush to her daughter-in-law's aid. Instead, she leaned back, her lips curling into a thin smile of approval at Sabrina, as though silently declaring, "This is the woman I choose for my son." Elena's knees weakened, her vision blurred. The room spun as she struggled to breathe. No one moved to help. Not one hand reached for her trembling body. She was utterly alone. And then, just as her body began to collapse, a figure in the crowd shifted, eyes narrowing, fists clenching. He had been watching all along, and tonight would be the night everything changed. Who was this man, and why did he care about Elena when no one else did? The applause that had once filled the ballroom had died. A heavy silence lingered in the air, broken only by the faint clinking of glasses and the muffled shuffle of uncomfortable guests. Elena stood frozen, her cheek burning from Adrian's slap, her heart pounding with the weight of humiliation. For a moment she thought she might collapse, but sheer instinct forced her to remain standing. She placed both hands over her belly, as if shielding her unborn child from the cruelty of the world. Her gaze swept across the crowd. Not one person stepped forward. Not a single family member, not even a distant relative, came to her defense. The ones who had once praised her for being gentle and kind now turned away, whispering behind their champagne flutes. The betrayal cut deeper than the slap itself. She was invisible, unwanted, discarded like a broken ornament. Adrian, still basking in the twisted spotlight, leaned close to Sabrina. His hand brushed her bare shoulder, and he whispered something that made her laugh, loud and deliberate, so the entire room could hear. It was a performance, a cruel stage where Elena was the unwilling actress. Elena's mind drifted, as if seeking refuge from the nightmare unfolding before her eyes. She remembered her mother, the soft lullabies, the warm touch of her hand, the way she had pushed Elena to study hard, even when money was scarce. Her mother had been everything. And then, during Elena's sophomore year in college, illness had taken her away. She had died in silence, leaving Elena with nothing but a ring and a final wish: find your father one day. Don't hate him. Just live bravely. The memory made Elena's chest tighten. Her mother had raised her alone, working 2 jobs to pay for tuition, sacrificing everything to give her daughter a future. Elena had promised to honor that sacrifice, to make her proud. But standing here, mocked and humiliated, she felt she had broken that promise. Tears welled, but she blinked them back. She would not let Adrian see her cry. Margaret Carter's voice sliced through the silence. "Elena," the older woman said, her tone cold as steel, "if you had any dignity, you would leave quietly. Stop embarrassing us. This family deserves better." Her eyes flickered toward Sabrina, glowing with approval. Elena's knees weakened. Her body trembled under the weight of rejection. She wanted to scream, to fight back, but her throat closed. Words failed her. She turned her head toward Adrian, searching his eyes for even a glimmer of remorse, a spark of the man she had once loved. But there was nothing, only pride and arrogance. Sabrina slipped her hand into Adrian's, intertwining their fingers as though sealing a cruel pact. The message was clear. Elena was no longer his wife in spirit. She was an inconvenience, a burden, a shadow to be erased. The orchestra, unsure, began to play again, soft notes meant to disguise the ugliness of what had just happened. But the damage was done. Elena's reputation had been shattered, her place in the Carter family stripped away in a single violent gesture. She turned slowly, her body heavy, her heart heavier still. With every step toward the exit, her heels echoed like funeral bells. Guests parted silently, some with pity, others with contempt. She walked alone, clutching her stomach, whispering silently to her unborn child, "Hold on. Please, hold on." As the massive double doors closed behind her, the cool night air slapped her face harder than Adrian ever could. She stumbled into the darkness, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. The city lights blurred, her vision swimming. She had no one, no mother, no father, no husband, only the baby inside her. But in the shadows of the ballroom, behind the glitter and laughter, a man followed with steady steps. He had seen enough. He would not let her fall alone. Who was this mysterious figure, and how would he change the course of Elena's shattered life? The cold air outside the ballroom stunned Elena's face as she staggered toward the sidewalk, her heels clicking unevenly on the polished stone. She leaned against a lamppost, drawing in shaky breaths. Her belly tightened beneath her trembling hands, a reminder that she was not alone. Her baby needed her strong, even when she felt like breaking apart. For a moment, the chaos of the gala faded, replaced by the soft echo of another night long ago. She remembered sitting at a small kitchen table, the scent of chamomile tea filling the air. Her mother, pale from illness, had reached across the table, placing a delicate silver ring into Elena's hand. "This belonged to someone I once loved," her mother whispered, her voice raspy but tender. "One day you might search for him, or maybe fate will bring him to you. Don't hate him, Elena. Life was complicated, but promise me you'll live bravely." Elena had clutched the ring, confused. She had always known her father was absent, but her mother never spoke his name. She only said he had belonged to another world, one filled with wealth and responsibility, and that he had never known Elena existed. When her mother passed away during Elena's second year of college, the world collapsed. The dorm room felt like a prison, the textbooks like meaningless weights. But Elena had refused to give in. She worked part-time jobs, waited tables, and cleaned offices at night just to stay in school. Every sleepless night she thought of her mother's sacrifices. Every exam she passed, she imagined her mother smiling down, proud. Adrian had entered her life during those years. He was charming, ambitious, and full of promises. At first, he seemed to see her for who she truly was, resilient, kind, determined. He said he admired her strength, how she had survived alone. For Elena, starved for love and aching from loss, his attention felt like salvation. She believed him when he said he'd protect her, that he'd build a life with her that would make her mother's spirit proud. but that man was gone. Or perhaps he had never truly existed. The ring still lay hidden in Elena's small jewelry box back at the apartment, a secret she rarely spoke of, even to herself. Whenever she touched it, her heart ached with questions. Did her father live nearby? Was he alive at all? Would he even care if he knew she existed? She had no answers, only the faint hope that maybe, just maybe, life had more in store for her than humiliation and loneliness. The sound of footsteps pulled her back to the present. She turned, startled, as a tall figure emerged from the shadows of the hotel entrance. He was sharply dressed, his presence commanding but not threatening. His eyes, dark and steady, studied her with quiet intensity. "I saw what happened in there," he said, his voice low, measured. "You shouldn't be out here alone, not in your condition." Elena's instinct told her to retreat. She had been betrayed too many times to trust easily. "I don't need anyone's pity," she whispered, her voice breaking. "It's not pity," he replied firmly. "It's concern. And whether you like it or not, you're not invisible." His gaze dropped briefly to the swell of her belly. "Not to me, and not to the child you're carrying." Elena's breath caught. Something in his tone, in the way he looked at her, not as a burden but as someone worth protecting, stirred a flicker of warmth in her chest. But before she could answer, the screech of tires echoed from the street. A black car slowed beside the curb, the tinted window rolling down. Inside sat Margaret Carter, her eyes cold, her lips curled into a sneer. "Elena," Margaret called out, her voice sharp enough to slice the night. "Get in. You're making this family look pathetic. Do you really want the world to see you begging in the street?" Elena froze, caught between the stranger's steady presence and her mother-in-law's venomous command. Would she obey the woman who despised her, or step into the unknown with the man who seemed to see her pain? The black car idled at the curb, its headlights casting sharp beams across the pavement. Inside, Margaret Carter sat like a queen on her throne, pearls gleaming around her neck, her cold eyes locked on Elena. She tapped her manicured fingers against the doorframe, impatience etched across every line of her face. "Elena," Margaret repeated, her tone dripping with disdain, "you've embarrassed this family enough for one evening. Get in the car. Now." Elena's body trembled. The weight of her mother-in-law's scorn was heavier than the evening chill, heavier even than Adrian's slap. She had always tried to win Margaret's approval, cooking meals for family dinners, arranging flowers exactly the way the older woman liked, even ignoring her cutting remarks. Nothing had ever been enough. Tonight proved it once and for all. Elena's voice cracked. She swallowed hard, clutching her stomach. "I can walk home." Margaret's lips twisted into a cruel smile. "Walk home? Pregnant and pathetic, stumbling through the streets? Is that how you want the tabloids to see you? Maybe that's all you're good for, pity headlines." The stranger who had followed Elena stepped closer, his presence a shield against Margaret's venom. His eyes narrowed, his voice steady. "She doesn't owe you anything, Mrs. Carter. Leave her alone." Margaret's head snapped toward him, her expression turning sharp with recognition. "Nathan Blackwell," she sneered. "Of course. Always lurking where you don't belong. You think playing the hero makes you look noble? Stay out of this." Elena's eyes widened. She had heard Adrian mention Nathan's name before. A rival CEO, a man Adrian despised. What was he doing here, watching her fall apart? Nathan didn't flinch under Margaret's glare. "I'm not here for you. I'm here because no woman should endure what she just went through. And certainly not while carrying a child." Margaret laughed, a sound as cold as broken glass. "This child? Do you really think it matters? Adrian will remarry, and that baby will be forgotten, just like its mother should be." The words hit Elena like a knife to the chest. Her breath hitched, her knees buckling beneath her. She felt the sting of tears but forced herself to stand tall. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. "Live bravely." "No," Elena whispered, shaking her head. "I won't go with you." Margaret's eyes widened, then narrowed into slits. "Excuse me?" "I said no," Elena repeated, louder this time. Her voice still shook, but it carried a defiance Margaret had never heard before. "You've made it clear I'm not welcome. I won't beg for scraps of your approval. I may have nothing now, but I still have dignity." Gasps came from a few guests lingering near the entrance, watching the scene unfold. Margaret's face flushed with rage, the mask of elegance slipping to reveal the venom beneath. "You ungrateful girl." Margaret hissed. You'll regret this. When Adrian casts you aside for good, when the world forgets your name, don't you dare come crawling back. Elena's heart pounded, but she stood firm. She reached for the silver ring hanging from a thin chain around her neck, the last gift from her mother. Her fingers closed around it, drawing strength from the memory of love that was real, unlike the poisoned love of this family. Nathan stepped forward, placing himself between Elena and the car. She won't be crawling back to anyone, he said quietly but firmly. Not if I have anything to say about it. Margaret's eyes narrowed into icy daggers. You'll regret interfering, Blackwell. Both of you will. The car door slammed shut, the engine roaring as the vehicle pulled away, leaving the bitter scent of exhaust in its wake. Elena's legs nearly gave out, but Nathan steadied her with a gentle hand. For the first time that night, she felt a flicker of safety. Yet safety was fragile, and fate had far more storms waiting for her. What role would Nathan truly play in her life? And could Elena trust him? Or would he too betray her heart? The mansion loomed like a fortress when Elena returned that night. Its tall iron gates swung open slowly, as if reluctant to welcome her. Inside, the marble floors and gilded staircases gleamed with cold perfection, but for Elena, the house no longer felt like a home. Every step she took echoed against the walls, reminding her of how empty her place in this family had become. Adrian was waiting for her in the grand study, whiskey in hand. The fire crackled in the hearth, but his eyes were colder than stone. Sabrina lounged on the leather sofa, still dressed in the crimson gown from the gala, her lips curled in a smug smile. Margaret stood nearby, her arms folded, her gaze sharp and unyielding. You made a fool of me tonight, Adrian said, his voice low, dangerous. In front of everyone. Do you realize what that does to my reputation? Elena's throat tightened. You paraded another woman in front of our family, our friends. I only asked for respect, for our child. Her voice shook, but she forced the words out. Adrian slammed his glass onto the desk, amber liquid spilling across important papers. Respect? Don't talk to me about respect when you've embarrassed me. You don't belong in my world, Elena. You never did. Sabrina's laugh was soft, poisonous. He's right, you know, you were always temporary. Elena's heart cracked at the cruelty, but she steadied herself, her hands resting protectively on her stomach. I am your wife, Adrian. This child, our child, deserves better than this. Margaret stepped forward, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. Enough. Adrian doesn't need a weak, crying woman dragging him down. Sabrina is capable, refined, everything you are not. If you had any decency left, you would leave quietly before you ruin him completely. The words pierced Elena deeper than any slap. Her lips parted, but no sound came. She looked at Adrian, desperate for even a shred of kindness, of the man she had once loved. Instead, his jaw hardened, and he pointed toward the door. Pack your things, Adrian ordered. You're leaving tonight. The room tilted around her. Leaving? She whispered. You're throwing me out? While I'm carrying your child? This is not my child's fault, Adrian snapped. But I won't let you destroy me. I've given you a roof, a name, everything you could want. And still, you make me look like a fool. I won't allow it. Tears stung Elena's eyes. She remembered her mother's frail voice on her deathbed. Be brave, Elena. Life will test you, but you are stronger than you think. Her strength wavered now, but she forced herself to stand tall. If you want me gone, I'll go. But this child, your child, will know what you've done. Adrian's face twisted with rage. He took a step forward, but Nathan's warning voice from earlier echoed in Elena's memory. You're not invisible. For the first time, she realized she had a choice. She didn't have to beg. She didn't have to stay. She turned and climbed the stairs, her steps heavy with sorrow. In the bedroom, she pulled a small suitcase from the closet. Her hands trembled as she folded a few clothes, slipping her mother's silver ring into the side pocket. It was the only piece of her past she had left, the only reminder of love that had been pure. Downstairs, Adrian paced, Sabrina smirking at his side. Margaret's eyes glowed with victory. When Elena descended with her suitcase, they didn't speak. They didn't try to stop her. To them, she was already erased. The driver opened the door, the night wind rushing in like a cruel whisper. Elena stepped outside, clutching her belly, her suitcase dragging behind her. The gates of the mansion closed with a metallic clang that sounded like the end of everything. But as she stood on the empty street, Shivering in the darkness, headlights appeared in the distance. A familiar figure stepped out of a car, his eyes steady, his presence firm. Nathan Blackwell had returned, and this time he wasn't just a witness. He was about to become part of Elena's story. The night sky had opened, releasing a steady rain that soaked through Elena's thin dress as she stepped away from the Carter mansion. Each drop felt heavy, pressing down on her shoulders, chilling her to the bone. Her suitcase wheels rattled unevenly over the cobblestones, splashing through puddles that reflected the glow of distant street lamps. She tried to keep walking, tried to keep her head high, but her body was trembling with exhaustion. Her cheeks still burned from Adrian's slap, her heart still ached from Margaret's venom, and her soul still carried the weight of being cast out of the only home she had known since her mother's death. Every step was a struggle. Her breath came shallow, uneven. She pressed both hands against her swollen belly, whispering, "Please, stay strong for me. Please." But her body was failing her. In the distance, a pair of headlights cut through the sheets of rain. Nathan Blackwell's car slowed as he spotted her fragile figure trudging alone down the darkened street. His jaw tightened at the sight. He had followed her to make sure she was safe, but what he saw now was a woman on the edge of collapse. "Elena!" Nathan called as he pulled the car to the curb. He rushed out, rain soaking his suit, his shoes splashing through puddles. "You can't keep walking like this. You're going to hurt yourself and the baby." Elena shook her head weakly. I don't need your help," she whispered. But her lips trembled, her legs buckled, and the suitcase slipped from her grip. Nathan caught her just as her body crumpled forward. Her skin was ice cold, her breathing shallow. Panic surged through him as he lifted her into his arms. "Stay with me," he urged, his voice sharp with urgency. "Don't you dare give up." Her eyes fluttered, unfocused, and she whispered one word, "Mama," before they rolled back and closed. Nathan's chest tightened. He carried her quickly into the car, laying her across the leather seats. His driver glanced nervously in the mirror. "Hospital." "Now," Nathan barked, slamming the door shut as the car sped off through the rain. Inside, Nathan held Elena's hand, his mind racing. He had seen ruthless business rivals crumble under pressure, but nothing compared to the fragility of the woman lying unconscious beside him. Her strength was hidden beneath scars of neglect and betrayal. Yet even now, he could see the quiet resilience in her, the determination that had carried her this far alone. When they reached the emergency entrance, doctors and nurses rushed forward, lifting Elena onto a gurney. "Pregnant woman, fainted in the rain," Nathan explained quickly. 6 months along, get her stabilized." The medical team wheeled her away, monitors beeping as they hurried into the maternity ward. Nathan followed, pacing outside the double doors, drenched in rain and sweat. He clenched his fists, furious at Adrian for abandoning her, furious at Margaret for pushing her to this point. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, a doctor emerged, pulling down his mask. His expression was grave. "She's stable, but the baby..." The doctor hesitated. "There were contractions. We've managed to stop them for now, but she's at risk. Stress like this is dangerous." Nathan exhaled sharply, dragging a hand through his wet hair. Relief mixed with dread. She was alive, the baby still safe for now. But how much more could she endure before her body gave in completely? Inside the ward, Elena stirred. She opened her eyes to the sterile glow of hospital lights, her body aching, her heart heavy. She reached instinctively for her belly, tears slipping down her cheeks when she felt the faint kick of life. "You're still with me," she whispered. "Thank God." But as her eyes adjusted, she saw Nathan standing quietly in the corner of the room, his expression unreadable. For a moment she wondered why he had stayed, why he cared. And then, as if fate itself demanded answers, Nathan stepped forward, his voice calm but resolute. "Elena, there are things you don't know about yourself, about where you come from. And it's time you found out." The steady beeping of the heart monitor was the only sound filling the hospital room. Elena lay propped against crisp white pillows, her skin pale but glowing faintly under the fluorescent lights. Her hand rested protectively on her belly, fingers tracing soft circles as though willing her baby to feel safe. Across the room, Nathan stood tall, his wet suit jacket draped over a chair, his shirt sleeves rolled up. His hair was damp, his expression a mix of concern and quiet resolve. He had seen hostile takeovers, billion-dollar collapses, and ruthless betrayals in boardrooms, but nothing unsettled him quite like watching Elena's fragile form fight for life. "You stayed," Elena said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why?" Nathan stepped closer, his gaze steady. "Because no one else did. You shouldn't have been alone tonight, and you shouldn't be alone now." Elena swallowed hard, her throat tight. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," Nathan replied. He hesitated, then reached into his pocket and held something out. Elena's breath caught when she recognized it. The delicate silver ring her mother had given her. The one she always carried for strength. It must have fallen when she collapsed in the rain. "I picked it up outside," Nathan explained. "I've seen this before. Where did you get it?" Elena's chest tightened. She clutched the ring, her mother's final gift. "It was my mother's," she said. "She gave it to me before she died. She told me it belonged to someone she once loved, my father, but she never told me his name." Nathan's eyes darkened, his jaw tightening. "Your father? He may be someone I know." Elena blinked, confusion flickering across her face. "What do you mean?" "I've seen this design before," Nathan said, pointing to the ring. "It's custom. Handcrafted decades ago by a jeweler in Europe, and only one man in this city ever wore its match." Elena's breath caught. "You can't mean—" Nathan cut her off gently. "I can't be sure yet, but if I'm right, your father isn't just alive, he's one of the most powerful men in the city." The room seemed to tilt. For years, Elena had carried questions with no answers, whispers with no names. Could it be possible? Could the man her mother loved still exist, still breathe the same air, while she lived her life believing she was utterly alone? Her fingers tightened around the ring. "Why? Why would my mother never tell me?" Nathan's gaze softened. "Maybe to protect you. Maybe because she thought it was better you lived free of his world. But Elena, that world, it may already be yours whether you like it or not." Tears welled in her eyes. She remembered her mother's fading voice. "One day, you might search for him. Don't hate him, Elena. Life was complicated." Her chest rose and fell, heavy with emotions she couldn't name: fear, hope, anger, longing. For so long she had dreamed of having family again, of not being so alone. But to know her father might be alive, wealthy, powerful, it felt like a dream she wasn't sure she deserved. Nathan reached out, his hand hovering close but not quite touching hers. "Elena," he said firmly, "you and your child deserve more than what Adrian gave you. You deserve truth, and I can help you find it." The heart monitor beeped steadily, filling the silence that stretched between them. Elena looked into Nathan's eyes, searching for any sign of deceit. All she saw was determination. She drew a shaky breath, clutching the ring so tightly it pressed into her palm. "If you know something, if you really know something, you have to tell me." Nathan's lips parted, but before he could speak, the door creaked open. Margaret Carter stood in the doorway, her eyes narrowing like daggers. "Well," she sneered, her voice dripping venom, "isn't this cozy? My pathetic ex-daughter-in-law entertaining a rival CEO in a hospital bed. I knew you were trouble, Elena." Elena froze, her heart racing. Nathan straightened, his jaw set, ready for confrontation. What venom had Margaret come to deliver this time, and how far would she go to destroy Elena completely? The sterile hospital room suddenly felt suffocating as Margaret Carter stepped inside, her heels clicking against the linoleum floor. The smell of disinfectant mixed with her overpowering perfume, making Elena's stomach churn. Margaret's eyes scanned the room with disdain, lingering on Nathan before locking onto Elena like a predator spotting prey. "What a pathetic scene," Margaret said coldly. "The discarded wife lying in a hospital bed, clinging to a bastard child and entertaining the enemy of her husband. How low can you possibly sink?" Elena's lips trembled, but Nathan stepped forward, his broad shoulders shielding her from Margaret's venom. His voice was low, controlled. "Mrs. Carter, this is neither the time nor the place. She's recovering. Leave." Margaret's laugh was sharp, bitter. "Recovering? From what? Her own dramatics? Don't be fooled, Nathan. She's always been weak, always a liability. Adrian should have left her years ago." Elena's hand pressed protectively against her belly, her heart aching at every cruel word. But this time, she did not remain silent. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. "Live bravely." "You've hated me from the start," Elena whispered, her voice trembling but resolute. "But this is your grandchild you're dismissing. Your son's blood. Does that mean nothing to you?" Margaret's eyes narrowed into icy slits. That child is nothing but a mistake, and if Adrian has any sense left, he will erase you both from his life completely. The words cut like knives, but before Elena could respond, Nathan's voice thundered through the room. Enough. His eyes blazed as he stepped closer to Margaret. You may be used to bullying people into silence, but not here. Not with her. You will not speak to her like that again. For the first time, Margaret faltered, taken aback by Nathan's defiance. But her pride quickly flared, and she sneered. You think you can protect her? You think Adrian will let you meddle in his affairs without consequence? You're a fool, Nathan. This family crushes anyone who gets in the way. Nathan's lips curved into a hard smile. Then maybe it's time someone stood in your way. The tension in the room was palpable. Elena's chest rose and fell rapidly, her fingers tightening around the silver ring in her hand. She had always feared Margaret, always tried to please her. But now she saw the truth. Margaret would never accept her, no matter what she did. Margaret turned back to Elena, her voice low and venomous. I'll give you one warning. Leave this city quietly. Disappear before Adrian makes sure you regret staying. You don't belong in this world, Elena. And if you stay, you'll destroy yourself, and that child. Elena felt her throat tighten, but instead of crying, she drew a shaky breath and lifted her chin. I may not belong in your world, she said softly, but that doesn't mean I don't have one of my own, and I won't let you erase me. Margaret's face twisted in fury, her perfect composure cracking. She turned sharply, her heels striking the floor like gunshots as she stormed toward the door. But before she left, she cast one last look over her shoulder, her voice laced with venom. Mark my words, Elena, you will regret defying me, and when Adrian is finished with you, there will be nothing left. The door slammed shut, rattling the walls. Silence filled the room once more, broken only by the faint hum of machines. Elena exhaled shakily, her entire body trembling. She turned to Nathan, her eyes wide with fear and uncertainty. Why won't she stop? Elena whispered. Why does she hate me so much? Nathan's gaze softened, but there was something else in his eyes. Something heavier, something he wasn't ready to reveal. He glanced at the silver ring clutched in her hand, then back into her searching eyes. Because she knows more than she's letting on. Nathan said quietly, and I think I know why. Elena's heart skipped a beat. Her grip on the ring tightened until the edges dug into her palm. What secret was Margaret hiding? And could it be tied to the truth about Elena's mysterious father? The Carter mansion glowed that night with golden light spilling from its tall windows. Laughter and clinking glasses drifted into the night air. For outsiders, it looked like a scene from a fairy tale, an elegant celebration of power and prestige. But for those inside, it was Adrian and Sabrina's triumph. The grand dining hall had been transformed into a glittering stage. A long table stretched across the room, covered with crystal goblets and fine china. Sabrina stood at the head of the table, draped in a diamond-studded gown, her hand proudly resting on Adrian's arm. She looked radiant, but her radiance was sharpened like a blade, meant to wound. Tonight, Adrian declared to the crowd of investors, board members, and socialites, we celebrate a new beginning. A partnership not just in business, but in life. Sabrina has been my greatest supporter, and she represents everything the Carter name will stand for moving forward. Polite applause filled the air, but behind the smiles were whispers. Everyone knew Elena had only just been cast aside. Everyone had seen the scandal at the gala. Still, Adrian thrived on the controversy. He loved the attention, the spectacle, the image of a man who did what he pleased without consequence. Sabrina raised her glass, her voice dripping with satisfaction. To Adrian, the man who knows how to build an empire, and to a future where weakness is left behind. The room erupted in applause again, louder this time, as though forced. Margaret Carter, seated proudly at Adrian's side, lifted her glass with a satisfied smile. She glanced at Sabrina with approval, as if silently declaring, "This is the daughter-in-law I've always wanted." But not everyone was convinced. A few investors exchanged uneasy looks. Elena had always been quiet but respectable, a symbol of stability. Sabrina's arrival felt like a gamble, glamorous, yes, but reckless. Still, none dared voice their doubts. Adrian's power, for now, remained untouchable. As the dinner continued, Sabrina basked in the spotlight. She leaned into Adrian, laughing too loudly at his jokes, flaunting her new place at his side. She was careful to show off the glittering bracelet Adrian had bought her that morning, jewelry purchased with money that should have been securing the company's crumbling foundations. Margaret's voice carried across the table. With Sabrina by his side, Adrian will take this company further than ever before. Mark my words, she is the future of this family. Sabrina's eyes glowed with triumph, but beneath the surface, a hunger gnawed at her. She wanted more power, more wealth, more recognition. Adrian was her ticket, and she would cling to him until every ounce of status was hers. In a quiet corner of the hall, however, one man observed in silence. A shareholder, older and shrewd, whispered to the man beside him. Adrian's playing a dangerous game. The books don't add up, and sooner or later someone will start asking questions. Back at the head of the table, Adrian raised his glass once more. This is only the beginning, he declared. The Carter name will stand above all others. The crowd cheered on cue, but outside the tall windows, storm clouds gathered, their shadows stretching across the mansion. Far away in a small hospital room, Elena stirred awake. She thought of the humiliation, of Margaret's threats, of Adrian's cruelty. And for the first time, she didn't just feel sorrow, she felt anger. A fire burned quietly inside her, a fire her late mother had always believed she carried. Nathan's words echoed in her mind. You deserve truth, and I can help you find it. Elena tightened her grip on the silver ring, her mother's last gift. She didn't know how yet, but she knew one thing. Adrian and Sabrina's celebration would not last forever. And even as they toasted to their new beginning, the seeds of their downfall had already been planted. What storm was brewing against Adrian and Sabrina, and who would be the first to strike? The Carter mansion still buzzed with laughter and the clinking of glasses, but beneath the noise, whispers began to snake through the air. Businessmen leaned closer to one another, their voices hushed. Women in jeweled gowns exchanged subtle glances. For all its sparkle, the evening felt brittle, like glass ready to shatter. Adrian basked in the spotlight, holding Sabrina close as though she were his prize. But he failed to notice the restless energy in the room, the murmurs of unease slipping like smoke between the guests. Have you seen the numbers? One shareholder whispered to another near the bar. They don't add up. The last quarter's profits were inflated. The other man frowned, lowering his voice. I heard he diverted company funds into private accounts. If that's true and it leaks, Adrian's finished. At the head table, Margaret raised her glass again, oblivious or unwilling to see the cracks forming. She smiled as Sabrina whispered into her ear, playing the role of dutiful daughter-in-law. But the satisfaction in Sabrina's eyes was sharper than diamonds. She wasn't just basking in Adrian's power. She was already plotting how to secure it for herself. Later that evening, when the party dwindled and most guests had left, Adrian pulled Sabrina aside into the study. The heavy oak doors closed behind them, shutting out the muffled voices of servants clearing dishes. Adrian poured himself another glass of whiskey, his hand unsteady. Did you hear them? He muttered. They're starting to question me. The board, the investors, they smell weakness. Sabrina crossed the room, her red silk gown whispering against the floor. She took the glass from his hand, setting it down firmly. Then give them no reason to doubt you. We're stronger together. You have me, and with me, you'll silence them all. Adrian searched her eyes, desperate for reassurance. Sabrina smiled sweetly, cupping his cheek. But as she leaned close, her gaze flickered toward the drawer of his desk, the one where he kept the company's financial records. Her thoughts twisted like a knife. If he falls, I'll need proof. Something to protect myself. Something to make sure I'm never dragged down with him. Meanwhile, in the quiet of the hospital room across town, Elena stirred awake again. Nathan sat nearby, his phone buzzing with updates. His contacts in the financial world were already talking. Adrian's name was being whispered not as a rising star, but as a liability. Nathan leaned forward, lowering his voice. Elena, it's starting. The cracks in Adrian's empire. People are talking about missing funds, about corruption. He thinks he's untouchable, but no one is untouchable. Elena's heart pounded. She remembered Adrian's words, the cold dismissal, the arrogance. A part of her wanted to shrink away, to forget everything. But another part, stronger, fiercer, wanted to see justice. My child deserves better than a father who ruins lives, she said softly, her hand tightening on the silver ring. "If there's truth to what you're saying, I want to know it. I want to see him exposed." Nathan studied her carefully, recognizing the fire in her eyes. "Then we'll find the truth together." Back at the Carter mansion, the celebration wound down. Adrian slumped in his chair, drained, while Sabrina slipped quietly back into the study. She opened the desk drawer with a careful hand, her heart racing. Stacks of papers, account ledgers, and USB drives gleamed under the dim light. Proof, dangerous proof, lay within reach. Her lips curved into a smile. "If Adrian ever falls, I'll make sure I land on my feet, and if necessary, I'll be the one to push him." The storm clouds outside rumbled louder, lightning flashing across the sky. Adrian poured himself another drink, unaware that betrayal was already taking root under his own roof. And miles away, Elena sat upright in her hospital bed, determination steady in her eyes. She was ready to face the truth, but could she handle the shocking revelation about her father that was about to change everything? Rain pattered softly against the hospital window, the storm outside echoing the storm inside Elena's heart. She sat upright in bed, the silver ring dangling from her fingers, spinning slowly on its chain. The beeping of the heart monitor marked each second like a drumbeat of destiny. Nathan sat in the chair beside her, his elbows resting on his knees, his gaze fixed on her with an intensity that made her chest tighten. He had been circling something all night, a truth heavy on his tongue, and now she was ready to hear it. "You said you knew something," Elena whispered, "about my father. Tell me." Nathan exhaled, leaning back. His expression softened, but his voice carried a weight that made the air in the room feel heavy. "The ring you carry, it isn't just jewelry, it's part of a set. And the man who owned its twin was one of the most powerful men in the city, a man who shaped empires." Elena's breath caught. "Who?" "Victor Lancaster," Nathan said slowly. "The founder of Lancaster Holdings. A billionaire, ruthless but respected, and as far as anyone knows, he never had children." The name struck Elena like thunder. She had seen the Lancaster name on skyscrapers, on news headlines, on the cover of financial magazines. A man untouchable, legendary. Could he really be the man her mother had loved, the father she had never known? "No," Elena whispered, shaking her head. "That can't be. My mother would have told me. She wouldn't have kept something like that from me." Nathan's eyes softened. "Maybe she wanted to protect you. Victor was married when he was younger. His wife couldn't have children. They lived in a world where appearances mattered more than truth. If your mother loved him, she might have thought it was better to walk away than destroy his life." Elena's chest ached as memories flooded back. Her mother's tired eyes, her gentle smile, her quiet insistence that Elena live bravely. She remembered the nights she'd caught her mother staring at the ring, her fingers tracing its design like a prayer. "She always said she hoped I'd find him one day," Elena whispered. "She said not to hate him. I thought she was just speaking out of kindness. But if what you're saying is true..." Her voice broke, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Then all this time, I've been his daughter, and he never even knew." Nathan reached out, gently covering her trembling hand. "Elena, if Victor is your father, you're not powerless. You have a legacy, a place in the city no one can erase. Not Adrian, not Margaret." But Elena shook her head fiercely. "I don't want his money. I don't want his empire. I just..." Her voice faltered, softening to a whisper. "I just want to know if he ever loved my mother, if he would have wanted me." The silence between them was thick with unspoken truths. Nathan's gaze lingered on her, steady and unwavering. "I can find out. I can get you answers. But once you open this door, Elena, there's no going back. Victor Lancaster is not a man who tolerates weakness or surprises." Elena clutched the ring to her chest, her tears mixing with determination. For the first time, the thought of meeting her father didn't terrify her. It gave her strength. "I need to know," she said firmly. "For me, for my child, I need to know the truth." Nathan's lips pressed into a line. He nodded once, decisive. "Then I'll arrange it. But understand, if Victor accepts you, the Carters will never touch you again. And if he rejects you..." He let the words hang in the air, heavy with consequence. Elena's heart thudded in her chest, the weight of destiny pressing down. She wiped her tears and looked out the rain-slicked window, her reflection merging with the storm outside. And then the door to her hospital room creaked open. A nurse peeked in, her expression hesitant. "Miss Moore, there's a visitor here asking for you. He says his name is Victor Lancaster." Elena's entire body froze, her breath caught in her throat. Her father had come to her. Was this salvation or the beginning of another heartbreak? The door swung open slowly, and in stepped a man whose presence filled the hospital room before he even spoke. His silver hair was perfectly groomed, his suit tailored to perfection, and his sharp blue eyes carried the weight of decades of power. Victor Lancaster was a name Elena had only seen in magazines and on towering skyscrapers. Yet here he was, standing in front of her. For a moment, the room fell silent. Nathan straightened from his chair, his eyes flicking cautiously between Victor and Elena. Elena's chest tightened, her breath shallow, as if the air itself had thickened. She clutched the silver ring against her heart, the very ring her mother had left her. Victor's gaze landed on the ring instantly. His face, usually carved from stone, shifted, just slightly. His eyes widened, his breath caught, and for the first time a crack appeared in his mask of control. "That ring." His voice was low, hoarse, almost disbelieving. "Where did you get that?" Elena's throat tightened. She wanted to speak, but her voice refused to come. She glanced at Nathan, who gave her a reassuring nod. Gathering her courage, she whispered, "It was my mother's. She gave it to me before she died. She said it once belonged to someone she loved." Victor took a step closer, his eyes locked on her. "What was her name?" "Isabella Moore," Elena said softly, her voice trembling. "She raised me alone. She never spoke your name, only that you were someone she couldn't be with. Someone she loved too much to destroy." The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Victor's hand lifted to his mouth, his jaw tightening as though he were swallowing back years of buried grief. "I searched for her," he finally said, his voice cracking under the weight of memory. After we parted, I tried. But she vanished. My marriage was a cage, my family a prison. Isabella deserved more than secrets and shadows. I thought she had forgotten me." Elena's eyes blurred with tears. "She never forgot. She carried you with her every day. Even when she was sick, even when she knew her time was short, she told me not to hate you." Victor's eyes glistened. Slowly, with trembling hands, he reached out, but stopped as if afraid to break her. "Elena, you're my daughter." The words shattered something inside her. For years, she had dreamed of this moment, imagined his face, his voice, wondered if he even knew she existed. To hear it now, spoken aloud, was overwhelming. She pressed her hand to her mouth, sobbing silently. Nathan looked away, giving them space, though his jaw tightened with unspoken thoughts. Victor finally stepped forward, his hand hovering near her shoulder. "I failed you," he whispered. "I failed your mother, but I will not fail you now. You are my blood, my legacy. And that child you carry, my grandchild. You'll never be alone again." Elena shook with sobs, her heart torn between joy and sorrow. She thought of her mother, how much she would have wanted this moment, how much she had sacrificed so Elena could live bravely. Still, a sliver of doubt pierced her. Could she trust him? Or was this just another man of power making promises too easily? Victor seemed to read her hesitation. "I know trust cannot be built in a day," he said, his voice steadying. "But everything I have is yours, Elena. Everything. You are my heir, and no Carter, Adrian, or Margaret will ever touch you again." Elena's tears slowed, replaced by a fragile hope. She clutched his hand, feeling for the first time in years what it was like not to be completely alone. But just as warmth spread through her chest, the hospital door burst open again. A nurse rushed in, breathless, her face pale. "Mr. Lancaster, Miss Moore, there's a problem. Adrian Carter is here, demanding to see Elena. He's furious." Elena's blood ran cold. Would her fragile reunion with her father be torn apart before it even began? By the very man who had destroyed her life? The echo of hurried footsteps filled the hospital corridor, each one carrying the weight of fury and arrogance. Adrian Carter stormed toward Elena's room, his face twisted with rage, his tie askew, and his eyes bloodshot from whiskey and sleepless nights. Behind him trailed 2 security men from his company, though it was clear Adrian wasn't here to be protected. He was here to attack. Inside the room, Elena froze as the nurse's warning sank in. Her hands instinctively covered her stomach, fear rippling through her body. Nathan immediately moved to the door, his frame blocking the entrance, his jaw tight. Victor Lancaster, calm but lethal, straightened his shoulders, his presence filling the room with authority. The door burst open, and Adrian stormed in. His voice boomed like thunder. "Elena, what the hell do you think you're doing? Hiding in here with him?" He jabbed a finger toward Nathan, venom dripping from his tone. "And with him?" His gaze turned to Victor, narrowing with suspicion. "Who the hell are you?" Elena's pulse raced. She wanted to shrink back, to hide, but her father's steady hand on her shoulder grounded her. For the first time, she wasn't facing Adrian alone. Victor stepped forward, his voice calm but sharp as a blade. "I am Victor Lancaster, and this woman is my daughter." The room fell silent, the words striking Adrian like a blow. His face paled, his lips parting in disbelief. Then, as the truth sank in, his shock twisted into something darker, fear, quickly masked by scorn. "Your daughter?" Adrian laughed bitterly. "That's impossible. Elena's a nobody, a charity case I was stupid enough to marry. Don't tell me you actually believe her lies." Elena's tears burned behind her eyes, but she forced herself to stand tall. "It's not a lie. My mother was Isabella Moore. She loved you once, Adrian, and you used that love to break me. But I'm not alone anymore." Victor's eyes hardened. "Adrian Carter, you've humiliated my daughter, endangered my grandchild, and dared to treat her as disposable. You will answer for that." Adrian sneered, though his bravado wavered under Victor's piercing gaze. "Answer? To you? Don't think your billions scare me. Elena is still my wife, and what happens to her child is my business." Nathan's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "You lost the right to call yourself her husband the moment you struck her in front of your family, the moment you threw her into the street like trash." Adrian lunged forward, but Victor raised a hand, and his security men blocked Adrian instantly. The contrast was striking, Adrian's chaos against Victor's cold control. "You don't belong here," Victor said, his voice ice. "Elena is under my protection now. If you come near her again, I will bury you in ways you can't imagine." Adrian's face contorted with rage. "You think you can just steal her away? You think you can take what's mine? I'll fight you, Lancaster. I'll fight all of you." Victor's lips curved into a thin smile. "Then prepare yourself, because this fight won't be in your favor." Adrian's chest heaved, his fists clenched. He glanced at Elena, his eyes blazing with hatred. "You'll regret this," he spat. "Both of you. I'll make sure of it." The guards forced him back into the hallway, his shouts echoing down the corridor. The door slammed shut, leaving silence in his wake. Elena collapsed back onto the bed, her whole body shaking. Victor placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. "He won't touch you again," he promised. "Not while I'm alive." But Nathan's eyes told a different story. He knew Adrian wouldn't stop. He knew a desperate man was a dangerous man. And as storm clouds churned outside the hospital, Nathan whispered under his breath, "The real war has only just begun." The morning sun filtered through the hospital blinds, warm and golden, yet Elena felt as though she had stepped into another world entirely. The night before, she had been a discarded wife, humiliated and alone. Now, as she sat with Victor Lancaster, the man who had just claimed her as his daughter, her life was shifting in ways she could barely comprehend. Victor was different from Adrian in every possible way. Where Adrian's power came from arrogance and intimidation, Victor's came from control, silence, and precision. Every word he spoke was measured, every movement deliberate. And now, every ounce of that power was focused on Elena. "You're leaving this hospital today," Victor said firmly. "Not to go back to that mansion, not to hide in fear, but to come home, with me." Elena's lips parted in disbelief. "Home? You mean, to the Lancaster estate?" Victor interrupted gently. "It's your home now. It always should have been." The words hit her with a strange weight. For years she had longed for belonging, for safety, but to suddenly be welcomed into the most powerful family in the city, it was overwhelming. Nathan, standing nearby, caught her expression and spoke softly. "You don't have to decide everything right now. Just breathe, one step at a time." But Victor was already in motion. By the afternoon, black cars with tinted windows arrived at the hospital entrance. Discreet but unmistakably powerful, they drew the eyes of everyone in the lobby. The Lancaster crest glimmered on the doors, a symbol of wealth and legacy. As nurses wheeled Elena toward the exit, whispers erupted around her. "Is that Victor Lancaster? Who's the young woman? His daughter? I didn't know he had children." Elena's cheeks flushed, but she kept her head high. clutching her mother's ring as though it anchored her to reality. She was no longer invisible, no longer the outcast wife. When the car doors opened at the Lancaster estate, Alina's breath caught. The sprawling mansion rose before her like something out of another life. White stone walls, sprawling gardens, fountains that sparkled in the sunlight. She had once been grateful for the modest house she shared with Adrian. Now, this estate felt like stepping into a different universe. Inside, polished floors gleamed, chandeliers sparkled overhead, and staff members bowed respectfully as Victor entered with his daughter. "Miss Lancaster," they greeted her, their voices warm, reverent. The title sounded strange to Elena, foreign yet undeniable. Victor guided her into a study lined with books and portraits. One painting in particular drew Elena's eyes. A young Victor, decades ago, standing proudly beside Isabella Moore, her mother. The resemblance was unmistakable. Tears welled in Elena's eyes as she touched the frame. "She was radiant," Victor said softly, his voice breaking for the first time. "And she gave me you. I will spend the rest of my life making up for the years we lost." Elena wiped her tears, overwhelmed by both grief and hope. For the first time since her mother's death, she felt the faint flicker of belonging. But Nathan's cautious voice cut through the fragile moment. "Victor, the Carters won't take this quietly. Adrian won't accept losing her. And Margaret, she's dangerous. They'll come after her, harder than before." Victor's eyes hardened, his expression returning to steel. "Let them try. They will find the Lancasters are not so easily challenged." Yet even as he spoke, far across the city, Adrian sat in his office, his fists slamming against his desk. Sabrina stood behind him, whispering venom into his ear, her smile sharp as a knife. "She's not stronger than us," Sabrina murmured. "She can't hide behind her father forever. We'll take everything from her. Just wait." Adrian's eyes blazed with rage, his voice a growl. "Then we'll destroy her." And in the Lancaster estate, Elena shivered as though a shadow had passed over her heart. For all her newfound protection, was she truly ready for the storm Adrian and Sabrina were preparing to unleash? The Lancaster estate became a cocoon of safety, but also a crucible for change. For the first time in years, Elena woke without fear of Margaret's venom or Adrian's cruel hand. Instead, she awoke to quiet gardens, the sound of fountains, and staff who treated her not as a burden, but as someone to be respected. At first it felt foreign. She moved cautiously through the grand halls, overwhelmed by portraits of ancestors, by the luxury that seemed to stretch in every direction. But Victor refused to let her shrink into the shadows. He insisted she attend family meetings, that she sit with him at the long mahogany table where decisions shaping empires were made. "You are not a guest here," Victor reminded her firmly. "You are my daughter, my heir, and one day this will all be yours. You must learn to carry it." Elena felt the weight of those words. But she also felt something stirring deep inside her, a strength her mother had always told her she possessed. Each day, she straightened her back a little more. Each day, she spoke with more confidence. Nathan, always nearby, became both her anchor and her mirror. He pushed her when she hesitated, but he also listened when the memories of Adrian's betrayal threatened to unravel her. One evening, as they walked through the estate's garden, he stopped her gently. "You've survived humiliation, abandonment, and loss," Nathan said quietly. "But look at you now. You're not just surviving anymore. You're rising. Don't forget that." Elena met his gaze, the sincerity in his eyes warming her in a way she hadn't expected. For the first time, she began to believe it. Her transformation wasn't only emotional, it was physical too. Victor arranged for stylists, but Elena chose how far she would go. Gone were the plain dresses that had once made her invisible at Carter family dinners. In their place came tailored suits that commanded attention, gowns that turned heads. One morning she stood before the mirror, her hair swept elegantly back, a sleek navy dress hugging her figure. She barely recognized the woman staring back, a woman who carried not just the weight of survival, but the promise of power. Still, beneath the glamour, she carried her mother's ring on its chain. Hidden under her clothes, a reminder of where she came from, of the love that had given her life. But Victor knew the world would not be gentle. "The Carters will strike back," he warned during one late-night meeting. "They've already begun spreading lies in the press, painting you as unstable, accusing you of abandoning Adrian while pregnant." Elena's stomach tightened. anger burning in her chest. He humiliated me. He threw me out, and now he dares to play the victim? Victor's eyes narrowed. This is the game of power, Alina. Lies, manipulation, perception. If you want to win, you must not only defend yourself, you must go on the offensive. That night, Alina lay awake, her hand resting on her belly. For months she had cried, begged, endured, but now she felt a fire she couldn't ignore. Adrian had tried to erase her, but she would not be erased. Margaret had tried to silence her, but she would not be silenced. For her child, for her mother's memory, for herself, she would fight. The next morning she walked into Victor's study, her eyes clear, her voice steady. "Teach me," she said. "Teach me everything. If I'm going to protect my child, I need to know how to fight back, not just as your daughter, but as Elena Lancaster." Victor's lips curved into a rare smile, pride flickering in his eyes. Nathan, standing at his side, nodded slowly, as though he had been waiting for this moment all along. Far across the city, Adrian slammed a newspaper down on his desk, Sabrina smirking at his side. The headline read, "Lancaster heir revealed. Alina Moore claimed as Victor Lancaster's daughter." Adrian's face burned red with fury. If Alina thought she could rise from the ashes, Adrian and Sabrina were already planning to drag her back into the fire. Adrian's office was no longer the picture of control it once had been. Empty bottles of whiskey cluttered his mahogany desk, papers were scattered across the floor, and his once pristine suit hung wrinkled from his shoulders. The headline from the morning paper, "Lancaster heir revealed," burned in his mind like fire. Elena, the woman he had humiliated and discarded, was now stronger than ever, shielded by Victor Lancaster himself. Sabrina sat perched on the edge of his desk, her crimson lips curved into a sly smile as she twirled her diamond bracelet. "You're letting this eat you alive," she said coolly. "Elena may have Lancaster behind her now, but she's still weak. She's still the same scared little girl who begged for your love." Adrian slammed his fist against the desk, rattling the empty glasses. "She humiliated me. She defied me. Now she parades herself as some kind of heiress while carrying my child. That child should have been my legacy, not her weapon." Sabrina's smile widened, her eyes glittering with cruel delight. "Then take it back. We don't have to destroy her directly. Let her think she's safe. Let her bask in her new role. And while she's distracted, we'll strike where she's most vulnerable." Adrian narrowed his eyes. "What do you mean?" Sabrina leaned closer, her voice a venomous whisper. "Her reputation. The public adores Victor, but they don't know her. If we leak the right stories, paint her as unstable, manipulative, even unfaithful, the sympathy will vanish. She'll look like nothing more than a scheming opportunist who trapped you with a child and then ran to Lancaster when it suited her." Adrian considered it, his anger shifting into a cruel smile. "And the board? The investors? They'll eat it up. They've been restless. If they believe Elena's child threatens to tie Lancaster Holdings to me, they'll panic. That could force Victor into a corner." Sabrina's laughter was low and sharp. "Exactly. We don't just ruin Elena. We use her to weaken Lancaster himself." But there was more. Sabrina wasn't saying. Deep inside, she saw Elena's rise as a personal insult. She had spent years clawing her way into the Carter's world, only for Adrian's discarded wife to suddenly eclipse her. Sabrina wanted Elena ruined, not just for Adrian's pride, but for her own. She leaned back, crossing her legs elegantly. "We'll start with the press. A leaked photo here, a fabricated rumor there. Once the seed of doubt is planted, it grows on its own. People love a scandal." Adrian's grin returned, darker than before. "And if that fails?" Sabrina's eyes gleamed. "Then we play dirtier. Everyone has secrets, even Lancaster. We just have to find them." Across town, Elena sat with Victor in his study, reviewing documents and listening to his lessons about power and control. She was learning quickly, her eyes sharper each day. Yet she felt a chill she couldn't shake, as though unseen eyes were watching her every move. Nathan noticed her unease. "What's wrong?" he asked gently. Elena pressed a hand against her chest where her mother's ring rested. "I don't know. I feel like they're planning something. Like this peace won't last." Nathan's jaw tightened. He had already heard whispers in business circles, rumors surfacing too quickly, too conveniently. The Carters were moving, and they were moving fast. That night, as the city lights flickered across the skyline, Adrian and Sabrina raised their glasses in a private toast. To Elena Lancaster, Sabrina said, her voice dripping with mockery. May her crown crack before she even learns how to wear it. Adrian clinked his glass against hers, his smile cruel. And may she crawl back to me in ruins, begging for mercy she'll never get. Far away, thunder rumbled across the sky, a storm gathering in the distance. And as Elena prepared for her new life, she had no idea that the Carter's trap had already been set, waiting to snap shut around her. The ballroom shimmered once again with chandeliers and polished marble, but this time the air was charged with anticipation. The Lancaster Foundation Gala was the most anticipated event of the year, an evening where power was displayed not in whispers, but in bold, glittering statements. It was Victor Lancaster's stage, and tonight, for the first time, Elena would step onto it as his daughter. News outlets had swarmed the entrance, their cameras flashing as luxury cars pulled up one by one. Politicians, business tycoons, and celebrities posed for photos, but the name on everyone's lips wasn't theirs. It was Elena Lancaster, the mysterious daughter revealed only weeks ago. Inside, Margaret Carter sat stiffly at a table near the front, her lips pressed into a thin line. Sabrina, radiant in a glittering gown, whispered in her ear, her smile sharp as a blade. Adrian, dressed immaculately despite the storm brewing in his empire, nursed a glass of scotch. His jaw was tense, his eyes scanning the room with restless energy. The orchestra swelled, signaling the arrival of the Lancasters. Victor entered first, his commanding presence drawing immediate respect. Then came Elena. Gasps rippled through the crowd. She wore a gown of deep emerald silk, simple yet breathtaking. Her hair swept into an elegant chignon. The necklace at her throat shimmered, but it was the fire in her eyes that silenced the room. No longer the timid wife who had once been humiliated before these very people, she radiated power, dignity, and strength. Nathan followed a respectful distance behind, his gaze never leaving her, his role both protector and silent witness. Elena walked slowly, deliberately, her hand brushing over the swell of her belly as if to remind the world that she carried not just a child, but a legacy. When she reached the head table beside her father, she lifted her chin. The crowd erupted in applause, some out of admiration, others out of fear. Margaret's face twisted with rage. Sabrina's smile faltered. Adrian's grip on his glass tightened until it nearly shattered. Victor took the microphone. Tonight, he declared, his deep voice commanding silence, I stand not just as the head of Lancaster Holdings, but as a father. A father who has been given a second chance. My daughter, Elena, is my pride, my heir, and my future. The applause thundered. Flashbulbs lit the room. Elena's eyes blurred with tears she refused to let fall. For the first time, she wasn't hiding. She was claiming her place. But the moment of triumph was fragile. At the Carter table, Sabrina leaned closer to Adrian, her voice a dagger cloaked in silk. We can still ruin her. All it takes is one scandal, one whisper placed in the right ear. Watch how quickly they turn on her. Adrian's eyes locked on Elena, his smile cold. Let her bask in her little moment. Tonight, she thinks she's untouchable. Tomorrow, she'll learn she's not. Back at the head table, Victor raised a glass to toast his daughter, but Nathan's sharp eyes caught something unusual. Two men slipping quietly through the side entrance, cameras in hand. They weren't reporters. Their eyes darted too quickly, their movements too deliberate. Nathan leaned closer to Elena, his voice low. Stay calm. I think the Carters are moving faster than we thought. Elena's heart pounded, but she kept her smile, refusing to show fear. The applause washed over her, but beneath the glittering lights, shadows were gathering. She had returned triumphant, yes, but triumph always drew enemies. And as the music swelled, the first move in Adrian and Sabrina's trap was about to unfold before the entire world. The gala sparkled with music and laughter, but beneath the glittering surface, danger crept like a shadow. Elena smiled gracefully at guests, her hand resting on her belly, but her eyes flicked toward Nathan, who had moved closer to the side entrance. He could feel it. The air was too heavy, too staged. Something was about to happen, and then it did. A large screen, set up to display highlights of the Lancaster Foundation's work, flickered unexpectedly. Gasps rippled through the room as the video feed shifted, not to charity projects or speeches, but to a grainy photo. Elena. The image showed her outside the hospital, pale and fragile, Nathan's arm around her as he guided her into a car. Another photo followed, Elena in a hospital bed, Nathan seated close, his hand hovering near hers. The angle suggested intimacy, something more than protection. Whispers exploded like wildfire. Is that Lancaster's daughter? Who's the man with her? Is she cheating on Adrian already? While pregnant? Margaret Carter smirked, her wine glass glinting under the lights. Sabrina leaned back in her chair, her eyes shining with triumph. Adrian, however, watched the chaos with a predatory grin, his voice low. Let them see who she really is. The screen shifted again, this time to forged text messages, carefully fabricated, messages supposedly between Elena and Nathan. He doesn't deserve me. I wish the baby were yours instead. The crowd erupted in shocked murmurs, scandal buzzing through every corner of the room. Elena's face burned with humiliation, her stomach twisting violently. Victor shot to his feet, his voice booming. Enough, this is a fabrication, a calculated smear. My daughter is innocent. But the whispers did not stop. Cameras flashed, reporters scribbled notes, the carefully planted seeds of doubt were spreading fast. Elena felt the weight of every stare pressing down on her. It was the gala all over again, the humiliation, the whispers, the feeling of being cornered. Her chest tightened, her breath shaky. But then she saw Nathan at the edge of the room, his gaze steady, unwavering. He shook his head slightly, mouthing the words, "Don't break." Elena swallowed hard, her hand tightening around her mother's ring. She stood slowly, the music fading into silence as all eyes turned to her. "Yes," she said, her voice trembling at first but growing stronger with each word. "That is me in those photos. A woman thrown into the street by her husband while carrying his child. A woman rescued by a friend when no one else cared. And if compassion looks like intimacy to you, then maybe you should ask yourselves what real love looks like." The room went still. Her voice carried across the silence, fragile yet unshakable. Nathan stepped forward. "Those messages are fake, and we can prove it. Every timestamp, every server log. Whoever made them will regret it." His eyes cut across the room, landing directly on Adrian. Adrian's smirk faltered, just slightly. Sabrina's hand twitched on her wine glass. Margaret's jaw tightened, but the whispers continued, poisonous and unrelenting. Elena could see it, the doubt taking root, the trap tightening around her. Victor placed a protective arm around his daughter, glaring at the crowd. "Believe what you want. But know this. Anyone who stands against Elena Lancaster stands against me." The power of his words stilled some of the murmurs, but not all. Adrian leaned back, his smirk returning, his voice low as he muttered to Sabrina, "Let them fight. Scandal stains deeper than truth. She's finished." Elena's heart pounded. She had survived humiliation before, but this time was different. This time, her reputation, her future, her child's legacy, everything was at stake. And then Nathan's phone buzzed sharply. He glanced at the screen, his expression hardening. He slipped it back into his pocket, leaning close to Elena. "I just got something," he whispered. "Proof, real proof. Enough to bring Adrian down for good." Elena's breath caught. Would this be the weapon they needed to end Adrian's reign? Or would the Carters strike first before the truth could be revealed? The gala's tension hung thick in the air, the crowd buzzing with scandal after the staged smear against Elena. But Nathan's whispered words still echoed in her mind. Proof. Enough to bring Adrian down for good. The following morning, the Lancaster estate became a war room. Victor, Nathan, and a team of trusted legal experts pored over documents spread across the long mahogany table. Elena sat among them, her hands resting protectively on her belly, her heart pounding. Nathan placed a thick folder in front of her. "These aren't rumors. These are company records. Adrian's been siphoning money from Carter Enterprises into offshore accounts, millions, and we have the paper trail." Victor's eyes hardened. This isn't just fraud. This is embezzlement on a scale that will bury him for life. Elena's hands trembled as she opened the folder. Page after page revealed damning evidence, forged signatures, false contracts, hidden transfers. Her mind flashed back to nights she had sat alone while Adrian worked late, believing he was building a future for them. In truth, he was building his empire on lies. Tears stung her eyes, but anger burned hotter. "He destroyed my life," she whispered. "But he won't destroy my child's. Let's finish this." That afternoon, the Lancasters moved swiftly. Victor's legal team filed charges, and Nathan contacted key board members who had long suspected Adrian's corruption. By evening, whispers became headlines. CEO Adrian Carter accused of massive fraud. Federal investigation opens into Carter Enterprises. Sources claim evidence provided by Lancaster Holdings. At the Carter mansion, chaos erupted. Adrian stormed through the halls, papers flying as he screamed into his phone. "It's a setup. I built this company. They can't touch me." But Margaret's face had paled, her iron composure cracking. She had pushed Adrian to climb higher and higher, blind to the rot beneath his empire. Now the foundation was crumbling, and even she could not stop it. Sabrina, however, was silent. Her sharp smile had faded. She stood in the corner, her mind racing. She had bet everything on Adrian, but now the ship was sinking. And Sabrina had never been loyal to anyone but herself. 2 nights later, the federal agents arrived. Cameras flashed as Adrian was dragged from his office in handcuffs, his face twisted with rage and desperation. "You'll regret this, Elena," he shouted into the flashing lights, his voice hoarse. "You'll regret crossing me." The crowd jeered, reporters shouted questions, and for the first time, Adrian Carter, the man who once slapped his pregnant wife in front of hundreds, was powerless. At the Lancaster estate, Elena watched the news broadcast. She pressed a hand to her chest, her breath uneven. Relief surged through her, but so did sorrow. This was the man she had once loved, the man she had believed would protect her. Now he was nothing but a criminal, his empire in ruins. Victor placed a steady hand on her shoulder. He made his choices. "You are not responsible for his downfall. He is." Nathan stood nearby, his eyes never leaving Elena. "It's over. You're free now." But Elena's heart whispered otherwise. Adrian might be behind bars, but his poison lingered. And Sabrina was still out there. The television flashed with breaking news footage. Reporters swarmed Sabrina outside the courthouse. She clung to her designer bag, her face pale but defiant. "I had no knowledge of Adrian's actions," she insisted. But beneath her polished words, cracks showed. The glamorous facade was slipping. Later that night, as Elena lay in bed, she felt her baby kick. She smiled faintly, whispering, "We're safe now." But safety was fleeting. Across town, Sabrina poured herself a drink, her hand trembling. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, her beauty still intact, but her world collapsing. Then the phone rang. She answered, her voice shaking. "You want to survive this?" a man's voice asked coldly. "Then you'd better be ready to pay the price." Sabrina's glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. What new storm was about to consume Sabrina, and would her downfall be even darker than Adrian's? The weeks after Adrian's arrest passed like the breaking of a storm. His trial became the headline of every newspaper, every talk show. Images of him in prison uniform, head lowered, replaced the once polished CEO who had ruled the city's boardrooms. For Elena, it was a strange mix of emotions. Justice, yes, but also sorrow. He had been her husband, the man she once loved. Now, he was nothing more than a warning carved into the annals of greed and cruelty. But Adrian was not the only one destined to fall. Sabrina's mask cracked quickly. Without Adrian's protection and Carter Enterprises' money, she became vulnerable. The tabloids circled like vultures, tearing into her with headlines, "The Mistress Who Betrayed the Wife." "Gold digger Sabrina Lee faces karma." She tried to hold her head high, but the whispers cut deeper than knives. She found another wealthy man willing to take her in, a businessman desperate for youth and beauty on his arm. For a time, she thought she had won again. She paraded herself in new gowns, diamonds glittering on her fingers, but fate is patient and cruel. Months into the marriage, Sabrina discovered the truth she had always feared. She could not have children. Doctor after doctor confirmed it. Her husband, once enchanted by her beauty, grew distant. His whispers filled with disappointment. "What good is a wife who cannot give me an heir?" Desperation gnawed at her. She clung tighter, plastering smiles over growing cracks. But the night of their anniversary, tragedy struck. A drunk driver barreled into their car on the highway. Sabrina awoke in a hospital, pain ripping through her body. When the doctors told her they had saved her life, but amputated one of her legs, her screams echoed down the sterile halls. The glamorous Sabrina Lee, who once strutted in designer heels, was now confined to a wheelchair. The world that once adored her turned away. Her husband divorced her within weeks, leaving her with nothing. The social circles that had once celebrated her presence now whispered her name with pity, or worse, disdain. Meanwhile, Elena's world blossomed. Under Victor's protection, she stepped into her role as his heir with grace and strength. She attended board meetings, made decisions with clarity, and won over allies not with arrogance, but with compassion. She became known not only as Victor Lancaster's daughter, but as a woman who had endured fire and risen stronger. Her child's birth brought even greater healing. The day she held her baby in her arms, tears flowed freely. "You'll never know the pain I carried," she whispered to the tiny bundle. "Only the love I have for you." Victor stood beside her, his eyes glistening with pride as he cradled his grandchild. For him, it was redemption. For Alina, it was rebirth. Nathan, ever her steadfast ally, remained close. Their bond deepened not in fiery declarations, but in quiet moments, his hand steadying hers during labor, his laughter soothing her in sleepless nights, his unwavering belief reminding her she was never alone again. The city took notice. Where Adrian Carter's name was now synonymous with corruption, Elena Lancaster's became a beacon of resilience. Reporters called her the woman who turned pain into power. And though the scars of betrayal lingered, she wore them like armor, a reminder of how far she had come. One evening, as she stood on the balcony of the Lancaster estate, the city lights glittering below, Elena thought of her mother. She touched the silver ring still hanging at her neck. "I found him, Mama," she whispered, "and I found myself." In another hospital across town, Sabrina sat alone in her wheelchair, staring at the reflection of her broken life. Once she had taken pride in destroying Alina. Now she was the one destroyed, left with nothing but regret. Alina, however, turned from the city lights and walked back inside, where her child slept peacefully, and her father waited with pride in his eyes. She had survived betrayal, cruelty, and loss, and emerged stronger. Her story was no longer one of tragedy. It was one of triumph. And as the curtain closed on Adrian and Sabrina's downfall, Elena Lancaster stood as proof that no cruelty could ever extinguish the fire of a woman who chose to rise. So, my dear friends, the story has come to an end. You're still here with me, aren't you? If you've made it this far, it means something in this story touched your heart. Maybe it reminded you of your own struggles or of someone you love. And that's why we share these stories, not just for drama, but for healing. Elena's journey reminds us that no betrayal, no cruelty, no loss can define who we are. What matters is how we rise again. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Think about that. The very pain that tried to break Elena became the fire that made her stronger. And in life, it's the same for us. If you are carrying wounds, know this. They are not the end of your story. They may be the very beginning of your transformation. So, if this story moved you, give it a like, share it with someone who might need it, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Together, let's keep reminding each other. No darkness lasts forever, and no woman, no man is truly powerless.